Justin's ready.
You're all right?
He gave us a thumbs up, so we can go.
Call this special meeting of the Fayette County Commissioners to order. We have 2 items on the agenda, correct? Okay.
Yes.
First of all, we've got the change order that Butler Fairman worked up for us for the Community Crossing Grant paving project. We'll let you guys explain, kind of help us understand what that paperwork said.
Jeremy's going to explain I'm going to pull this down and it'll fog up when I'm trying to talk to you. The change order, I just want to kind of reiterate a couple things on community crossings just so we can be clear. So when we apply, we create an estimate for application, and that, once that's awarded, that's your max from NDOT. Okay, that's the max fund, so it can only go down from there. So then when we go to bid, if that number is higher than the max, then the municipality is responsible for anything over that. That was the case we were in last year.
Right.
This year you were lower than the max, so your max gets reduced down to what that low bid is. So unfortunately, we don't get that difference to use in the project. So it gets reduced down to that, and that's both you and NDOT get advantage of whatever the pricing is at that time. So when we created your estimates for the projects this year, I called around, talked to big, small and medium contractors, kind of got their forecast for, what prices were going to be, and they all thought they was going to be about the same as this year, or the previous year. So that your bid price on surface last year was like $78 a ton. So I used 80 to give us a little, we don't
wiggle.
We want to be a little bit high on that when we go to NDOT. So your low bid came in at 67. So that's roughly the difference in what you're seeing. Everything else was pretty much in line with what we've seen across the board and what we saw last year in Fayette County. Last year your low bidder was Globe. This year it's O'Mara. I think we had 2 around $67, $68 a ton, and the other ones were in the 70s. So even your high bidder was still slightly lower than what we saw last year on your bid, like 73, and you were at 78. So just to reiterate the numbers, when we applied, the total of all the projects was roughly $1.3 million, and that would have been a $339,000 match from Fayette County and a $1 million match from NDOT. Your low bid was $996,000. So that would have reduced your match to $249,000, and then about $750,000 from NDOT. So the difference in match from what was anticipated at the application to the bid is about $90,000 that you don't have to put up for a match that you could still use in the projects and possibly this change order and some other things. So that kind of gets us up to where we're at today, and kind of how community crossings works in general. The only other thing I'll add to that.
Let me, if you don't mind, let me clarify something.
Yep.
In my own mind. What you're saying is, whatever the bid comes in at, the 996 or whatever it was, even though we were awarded $1 million, up to $1 million, we can't add to the project within that scope to get that 996 up to $1.3 million.
No, and we're not allowed, we was talking a little bit before, we're not allowed to have contingencies in there to add and to delete, but we have, I talked to Jalissa about this, it's a little different than normal federal aid or an NDOT project the way community crossings. Usually you don't have to reduce that. We can use that money for other things, so it's different community crossing. So what we've done this year on one other county, and it worked out really well, is we added a bid alternate of an additional thickness of asphalt, like an extra inch of intermediate or an extra 2 inches. So we have a base bid that's just like you did this year, say 2 inches of asphalt. Then we have an alternate for another inch of intermediate. So if that base bid comes in lower than your funding amount, then we can award the alternate to get you back up to that max. So that may be a strategy we use for next year.
I see.
Okay.
But we would have had to have that alternate.
We'd had to have that alternate in the original bid documents, and and then met it in the application scope that we asked for. We try not to be real specific on what we ask for in an application, so we have some flexibility when it comes to bid.
Right,
So that may be a strategy for next year. It worked out well. It was Clinton County that we did that in. It worked
Okay.
out well. And then the only other kind of rule for community crossings is against a federal aided project or a state funded project would be if you wanted to go up a street a little further and expand the footprint, we can't do that with community crossings. So when Jaleesa puts that application in, she's selecting the limits, and one of the things, it's got to be a clear limit. If you saw our estimate, if you guys actually saw that, we've got a list out. It's from this road to this road, and just the approaches, and then they get a map with that application. So they really kind of track that because, you know, people have an underrun, they go ahead and spend it, they may go ahead and do a whole nother block or something in town, or, you know, start paving a little more, and they're just trying to do what you want to do as economically as possible, is what they're.
so could the alternate bid included that extra mile?
No. So we would have had to
It
have
had
that
to-
in the footprint.
It would have had to been in the footprint, we would have, the first bid may have been a thinner layer
Right,
over all of it,
right.
and then the alternate bid would have been adding more to that, okay.
There could be a little strategy in that, so we could have done 4 miles at 3 inches and shown that extra mile at 2 inches with an alternate of an extra inch on that.
I see.
Something like that. Didn't have to be across the board. But there's some strategy and things that we've not had to do that way in the past. You know, an alternate in the past may have been the difference between paint and thermoplastic. Or in another community, we put signs in as an alternate. So if it came in low and they wanted to redo the signs on that street, they could. Street lighting, some things like that. So with that, I'll let Jeremy explain the change.
Yeah, you guys need a copy or is
Yes,
still?
please.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, the first thing is, you might recall, at the pre-con, we talked about on each of your bid locations, which are project 1 through 5, since we're gonna make a pole on both lanes at the same time, we don't need the adhesive items, the joint adhesive or the liquid asphalt sealant. Those have been deleted out on each of the 5 projects. We also talked about the patching. We went out and drove that, and you guys have done a good job of patching everything that needs to be done. There is no patching that needs to be done out there. So we've deleted those items off of each road and then took those dollars and put it into HMA surface on each road. So we kept each project at a 0 add from what was bid. That gets you about another 1/4 inch on the surface. So the plan was 1 inch surface, 1 inch wedge and level. So now you're at about 1 1/4 inch surface, 1 inch wedge and level. Does that make sense to everybody on that approach?
That makes a lot better sense to me.
Okay. Then we talked about what could we do on the additional mile to the county line on Springersville Road. What I put in here, and there's a few different options, obviously, but tried to keep it below that 90,000 that Mike referred to. That is the difference between the local match you had with the original application versus what got awarded. What I have in here right now is 3/4 inch wedge and level and 1 inch surface. That puts you at about $85,000 add. If you wanted to go on that additional mile, if you want to go 1 inch and 1 inch, you need about $98,000. If you want to go up to 1 1/4 inch and 1 inch, you need about $110,000. So again, 1 1/4 over 1 inch would be what we're doing on the other locations right now. But just to be conservative, I kept it at that amount because I knew you had that money, I believe, already allocated. So, it was just a draft. I was trying to kind of start the conversation and get things rolling with you guys and show you
So,
our approach.
Do I understand this right? All 6 projects would have striping?
So that is correct. So we did not, all the original bid roads had striping in it. We did not touch that pay item. It's still in there. And then we,
And is that just two stripes down the edges?
down
or
the middle. So yes. we're
Down the
good.
middle?
Down the
No outs?
No, no
Okay.
fog line.
Gary, typically on that, your center line is a regulatory line based on passing, no passing, or speed, and your edge lines are, you may have to help me with this, Jeremy, MUTC, you don't have to have edge lines depending on the width of your pavement,
So if you do any painting, you have to have the center, at least the center line.
typically, yes. Just
We
rule of
couldn't
thumb,
do
there's-
the,
yeah, there's some
we couldn't do
variation.
just the outside lines to
I
mark our
wouldn't advise
berms.
it.
Okay. Okay.
So that you've got paint in there for the center line for each road. On the extension of Springersville Road, we are into the railroad. We're coming up on the railroad crossing, so we got a
Added
price.
those costs, yeah.
So that cost is in there to replace those railroad markings.
So, if I understand you right, we could go with, at the very minimum, an inch on that extension and still stay under 100,000.
What's on here right now is 1 inch surface, 3/4 inch wedge level.
But if we wanted to go the 1 and 1,
It would put you at 98,000.
98,000.
So you need about another
For-
$8,000
yeah.
from what you've got put in.
I got a question. On the state highways, they put them reflectors in the center. Can we do that?
You can put reflectors
Is it
in.
more expensive than painting, or?
Yeah, I don't know what the pay on that is.
Yeah, it would add up quickly.
But would it be permanent where you wouldn't have to go back in like you do painting and repaint it every so often?
They would be somewhat permanent, but they do require maintenance. So they require like a crack seal around them because they kind of go up underneath the asphalt and they do need sealed around. So there are maintenance that goes with it.
there is maintenance yearly.
There is yearly maintenance, and if you ever go to overlay, you gotta pop them out, you gotta put them back in.
Yeah.
So
Typically, you
basically-
do not see them on county roads, you typically see them on higher volume.
I just, when I was in here on 121, and they was coming down there popping them things out like crazy,
There's a couple other alternates on the markings. Again, if you go to chip and seal or fog seal down the road, your striping's gone where there's paint, thermoplastic, or a reflector. So keep that in mind, for future maintenance. Typically you're gonna look at doing that 5-7 years out from now. If you're paving them now, you're gonna look at that and they're gonna start telling you when you should do it. This is more prevalent in town. You may have it here in Connersville, I don't know, but they're milling before they put the stripe down, so it gets it below the surface. Snow plows and things like that don't wear
on
that.
them.
Yeah. Again, if you do that on a county road and you go to chip and seal it, you've lost that expense down the road. I don't think they've been around long enough for us to know how long that's gonna last. That's probably new within the last 4 years.
Probably.
So it's a good concept. We'll see if it lasts, but that's just another
This-
tool in the tool bag.
This particular paint that is figured in on all this, what's the life expectancy of that? Will it last that 7 years before we have to chip seal? 5 to 7 years?
Depends on how much traffic, especially how much snow plowing. I mean, that's what really seems to wear on it.
Even the paint?
Even the paint.
Okay.
Thermoplastic lasts longer, but it's a lot more expensive. The paint on a low volume road, I mean, you should get 3-4 years out of it, I would expect.
We've been getting a lot of requests for striping especially on these newly surfaced roads,
Sure.
At night, they can't see the edges of them, that sort of thing, so.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Dale. The middle line's regulatory based on a manual. The edge is a safety item. So I wouldn't do one without the other. I wouldn't do the edges without the middle because it's somewhat regulatory.
So actually, if it costs you 20 cents a foot, It's gonna cost you each stripe 20 cents a foot.
Yeah, and I'll have, I think those, that's for that double, what was the price on that, Jeremy?
I think he's,
20 cents a foot.
Yeah, 20
Yeah,
cents a foot.
so that would cover the two whites on the edges, because that's a double quantity there, the double yellow, we double that linear foot.
So,
Is that right?
so otherwise, if we were gonna do the two outsides and the middle, you're talking about 40 cents a foot.
He's saying that the quantity in there covers each of those two lines down the middle.
So it is 20 cents a foot.
Yeah.
But that quantity, 20 to 180 for like one of the roads, that road's only 11,000 feet long, so that's why there's a double quantity. So it'd be 20 cents a foot per each line,
Okay.
so.
Oh, yes, I see.
So
So it's gonna be,
basically 80 cents a foot.
it's gonna be 80 cents a foot
You can do all.
To get all four.
to get all four lines.
Yeah.
Yes.
And to compare that to thermoplastic, you're looking at about $2 a foot, roughly,
At least.
Wow. For you to scrape off with blades, snowplows.
And we've all seen it peel. And once
Yeah.
it peels, you know,
You're done.
guys don't have thermoplastic out there to go start patching it in, so it is a maintenance item.
So, now, do I understand you right, the 20 cents a foot in this sheet here is for a double yellow line down the center of the road?
Yes.
Okay. So if we wanted to eliminate that and make it two white edge lines, the price would stay the same?
It would stay the same, but I don't
But-
think you want to eliminate the middle.
He's saying
double.
the
middle line's
the middle
gonna
line
keep
is
you out of
required.
trouble, in other
Yeah.
words.
It's more regular.
Legality
Yeah.
wise.
Basically, you're telling people you don't want them to pass out
They're going to do it anyhow.
there. Yeah.
Yeah.
What they do after you tell them that, it, you know, kind of
You
takes
told him you're out.
it takes the liability away from you.
Yeah.
And I have, some of the complaints, Dale, that I've had about striping is put something down the center to give us the idea of how wide, you know, where the center is, or put something down the outside to tell us where the edge is. But having nothing is what they're having trouble with. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't have that problem. I've never had that problem driving on those roads at night. And I don't know what some of them are seeing.
Wait till you s-
If I have trouble, I slow down.
Yeah.
I drive a little slower,
Makes sense.
you know.
Yeah.
But there again, people see differently through a windshield and at night and lights. So, but
Yeah, especially night driving is a challenge for an awful lot of people. You don't, you know, I've got some cataracts, they're not enough to have them taken off yet, but I can tell a big difference in night driving and the way I'm able to perceive the edge of the road and stuff, you know. So I know, I can understand some of the complaints we get, you know.
I've heard more complaints at night in the rain or
Yeah.
overcast.
Yeah, at night in the rain is especially bad,
But that's,
yeah.
it could be a full moon and be raining and I have trouble. I have trouble driving in rain at night.
Uh-huh.
So this is gonna get you started if we do the striping on this project.
That, do you fellows know, how far will a gallon of that paint go?
Gosh,
Do you know?
I could look it up. I could look at the typical application rate,
Yeah.
and I could look it up for you based off of.
I'm just curious,
Yeah.
and now I just bought some paint the other day that's $55 a gallon. Does this stuff come close to that?
You know, I've never had to buy anything personal that met the federal spec on waterborne paint. I would not think it's any cheaper. You know.
Most of these guys, most of these contractors sub that work out, and the guys apply it by in such large quantities.
Yeah.
It'd be hard for us to,
Yeah.
yes. But if Jeremy can get the gallons per mile or whatever, we could probably back it into some of these numbers pretty quickly. But
I wouldn't be surprised if it's 20 cents a lineal foot, that there's not at least 10 cents or 12 cents of labor in there.
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, if you go by the old rule of thumb,
That's right, 50.
labor's 50% of your,
Yeah.
or 100% of your material cost.
You've seen the equipment they used to put it down with too. It's
Yeah.
not cheap, so.
Yeah. So I'd venture to say the labor in that 20 cents is 10 to 15 cents at least.
That wouldn't surprise me. Now, I just saw the city crews striping Western Avenue this morning with that walk behind.
And they've got that's a new system. They just bought it this year.
Yeah, but they don't get very far in one day with it.
Right.
Yeah.
We could use all of them here in jail.
Yeah.
Give them paintbrush and a bucket.
We'll give them rollers. Let's be kind. Let's get 4-inch rollers. Okay, where do we want to go then? Do we want to leave it at that 84.9 and just do the inch and the 3/4 inch wedge and level and the inch final surface on that last mile, or not do the last mile at all, or where do you guys want to go with this?
Well, if we don't do that last mile, we'll have to go back just like we did on 650 West on Tower Road this year.
And just like we did the year before with Penville Road.
Yeah, it would be nice to get that entire strip done at one time.
Yeah. And as Mike alluded to, you got a really good bid price. If you're
Yeah.
going to use local funds, you got a really good price.
You
You're
know,
not going to get any lower, I don't think, on the tonnage price there.
So if we got $90,000 of our own match money left over because of the way the bids come in, and that's enough to cover what you have here on this sheet at
Yeah, the 3/4 and the 1 inch.
$84,998.
And I just drove that road this weekend, Dale, or this week, looking at it, and probably that last mile's the best mile,
Oh, yeah.
best part of that whole Springersville Road, as far as condition.
You didn't have to do that because the road being closed, did you?
No, okay.
I was going to say, I was on there too.
I'm thinking the 3/4 and the 1 inch would be sufficient.
Yeah, that last mile, I mean.
It's pretty smooth.
The
It's
edges of it are not
broken
real
away.
bad.
Just give it a light too.
But if we went 1 inch and 1 inch, you said that would cost how much?
Meaning 98,000.
98,000.
About an
Okay.
extra 8,000 of.
I know
And-
$1,000 wouldn't be bad price.
No, I mean, and
Not
I'm
much
sure
we'll get.
Jay can find that extra 8.
Yeah. If we did that, Jane, would we use that out of our restricted, MVH restricted fund?
I would
Could,
think,
yeah. Yeah.
Because construction counts, construction, reconstruction.
Yeah. Well, I just want it to be a good road when we're done with it. I want
I'll entertain a motion.
a good road.
Yeah, I do too.
Um,
I don't want to shortchange it,
No.
No, well, we're out there, might as well do it right.
especially if we're going to spend $2,175 to stripe it.
Yeah. Well, if you look what the county's real investment here is roughly $300,000 for the amount of paving we'll get. I mean, that's a bargain for our part, you know. The state's chipping in almost $1 million on this project, so we shouldn't complain about that.
What kind of mission would you
I would say approve this change order with an inch and an inch.
Okay.
Is that
Yeah. I'll
the
revise
proper
it.
language?
Yep, I'll revise it.
I'll
and-
make a motion to that.
Okay, I'll second that motion.
And who knows, that they may not be able to tell the difference between an inch and an inch and a quarter when they get out there. You know,
They will at the end.
So then we'll need to get get another
make sure that Jay can,
$9,000?
$8,000. Because this is just shy of 90, or 85,000, so we don't need,
We've got 54 right now of the match money that's already there. If we spend that amount,
And you still got 54 left?
yeah, because we had
Okay, we got covered then.
90,400, and then minus that, we leave us with about 5,400. So we
So
only have to come up with another
3,000,
three.
another 3,000. Surely there's
3,000.
enough.
Well, yeah, okay. That makes it even
Easier.
easier, yeah.
All right. I think that there was a motion made to approve the change order with project 6. Yep. Is it 6?
Correct, yes.
Going at an inch wedge and level and an inch surface material at the $98,000 cost for that change order. And it's been seconded. Is
Yes.
there any discussion or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
3 ayes. Thank you very much. And-
Hey, I'll tell you something, on your glasses steaming up, if you
Yeah.
put tape over your mask, just tape, scotch tape right there, you won't have it bother you.
I'll try.
You need signed?
I'll check it.
We need to revise it. I need to revise it.
Okay.
You might feel it does, but it works.
And you'll get that
I need to go
to
down.
Melissa? You'll get it? All right. You'll holler at me when it's ready to sign then. Okay. All right. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you.
We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
I appreciate you coming down and explaining that to us a little better
No
too.
problem. Glad to do it.
So, I am assuming there won't be any further meetings, pre-construction meetings then with this
Yeah,
change.
I mean, they should
It'll-
be done in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I mean, they're still planning on starting early September.
Oh, they've moved it up a little bit because wasn't he saying the middle of September?
Yeah, I think early September is what he's been saying.
Okay, well, good, good.
We'll let you know when we get a little closer.
All right,
Okay, thank you.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
And then the second item of business today that we have been awarded a reimbursable amount through the CARES Act of 700, and do you have the exact?
47, not the exact.
$747,000. It's some odd dollars. And what that does is any expenses incurred between the beginning of COVID and the pandemic and December 31st of this year, we can apply to have those dollars reimbursed. We must spend those dollars first. It's a reimbursable grant. Rick Hall and his law firm has put together a program to work with cities and counties to help them. Okay, the true dollar figure was $747,731 to help us and guide us in those expenditures and reimbursements. For that contractual service, they have offered a fee of $5,000 to do that. They do believe that $5,000 will be even reimbursable in the end. And I know, as Jane and I went through things and looked at things, we've had very little expense due to the COVID. However, there are some things that we could possibly do in maintenance of buildings and so on and so forth that could be refundable. So that's why Jane thought that it was a good idea that we discuss it and possibly hire Rick and his firm to help guide us in that. For instance, Jane and I talked about the possibility, through the feasibility study, it come out that our jail air handler system was antiquated. Well, if we could put in a new air handling system with better filtration that would help protect our inmates and our employees from viruses, the COVID or any other viruses, and if we could go ahead and put that in and get that reimbursed, those would be maintenance costs that we could get paid for through the CARES Act.
Well, we put an air handler in the Dollar General while we're at it.
Well, I mean, but I have a tendency to agree with Jane. If we're going to try to be creative with this, we need some assistance.
Yeah, somebody that knows we can do it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we don't just have that money just sitting there on the money
And
tree.
it's gotta be gone by a certain time, too.
Well, at least it has to be initiated. The projects have to be
But I
initiated.
think if he could look up where we could really use it to our advantage, we'd be a whole lot better off. It could be well worth it.
You know, maybe the courthouse could have an improved filter system put on the air handlers or something of that nature. Even, and social distancing in the jail, if there was remodeling that we could possibly do to spread people out more, and the cost. This wall that Betty is wanting in her office, that could be reimbursable, because it's protecting the employee and creating distance. So if you're talking about those kind of things, probably the $5,000 is a good investment.
Yeah.
Certainly, I wouldn't want to go out and spend anything on the assumption that we were going to be reimbursed.
Not
through-
too sure
through
it was
this,
getting reimbursed.
relying on my ability.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Me too, I agree.
Yeah.
We don't want to go to jail.
Yeah. Because my ability to navigate the federal rule book on these things is not credible.
I think the three of us can ditto that.
So, I mean, but if these specialists can offer that service for $5,000, I think it would behoove us to hire them and let them guide us through this thing. And if something goes wrong, then it's their fault.
Yeah, they can go to jail.
Well, I would entertain a motion.
Also move that we hire Rick Hall, Butler Fairman, and see.
No.
Or with, no.
Barnes and Thornburg.
Barnes and Thornburg. Different B.
Sorry, guys.
I'll second the motion.
Been a motion made and seconded that we hire Rick Hall and his law firm to guide us in the CARES Act reimbursement grant. Is there any other questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
3 ayes. So you'll get a hold of Rick and see if he can come down
Yes.
and get with us to kind of go over guidelines. Okay. That was the only 2 items, wasn't it?
That was it.
I'll move to adjourn.
I'll second.
Motion made and seconded for adjournment. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
3 ayes. Thank you, gentlemen.